Languages are made to be interpreted. How do you think people are viewing you and reading the language of your body? An important point to remember is that just because you think you are communicating one message, someone else might be interpreting that completely differently. And that's because we live in a fallen world of original sin. People aren't viewing you with a purity of heart. You know, when you receive a text message these days and you take it the completely opposite way of what it's meant, the context isn't there. You didn't understand what they were meaning, but you take it in a certain way. You get girls these days, they have to put a smiley face on the end of every message, a couple of kisses just to make sure they didn't take it the wrong way. Just extra precautions. And then they think about, oh, I wonder if they took it the wrong way. Maybe I should have put an extra kiss. It's the same with our body. We need to take extra precautions to ensure that our body language gets read and interpreted properly. And we'll talk about those precautions a little bit later. Like I said, we live in a fallen world. And as a result, people aren't reading our language of our body with a purity of heart. Okay, remember what purity means? Purity is the ability to see the glory of God in the human body. Now, many of us, myself included, have made mistakes in this area, had misconceptions. And the fact is that in this life, we may not get to a fullness of purity of heart, but that doesn't mean we just stop and we give up. A good test of our purity is to see what do we think of when we think of sex. The word sex, what comes to mind straight away? Do you think of this great mystery about what the body proclaims? The glory of God? And that the body reveals the union of Christ and the church and the world? Or do you see it as body parts, naked bodies, people misusing their bodies and people being promiscuous? If either way, it's because of what you've been exposed to and the influences in your life. So we need to prioritise those influences in our life so we can have a purity of heart. I'm sure that growing up in this world, you've noticed that the view the church has of the body and the view the world has of the body are completely different. They're two forces constantly pulling apart, pulling against each other. Why is this going on? Why is the world the opposite of what we think? When two countries are at war, they're enemies. They think about what the best cards are that the enemy has and they try to destroy that. Maybe you were someone who did debating at school. To be good at debating, you have to know what the other person's thinking and what their best cards are, and you try and bring that down, that argument. Does the church have an enemy? If there is an enemy of God who wants to keep you and me from eternal life, and if our bodies and the union of man and woman are meant to be a sign of that, what do you think the devil's going to attack? He's going to attack the greatest gifts that God has given us. He's not stupid, but he's not above God either. But like I said, he knows what is sacred and he knows what is essential to our salvation. And that's why he attacks those great gifts that God has given us. Many Christians, including myself, because I'm not a perfect man at all, have made the mistake of thinking that the body is bad, or they grow up with the impression that it is bad anyway. It is important to understand that Christianity does not reject the body. It does not reject the body. The Catechism of the Catholic Church actually says that the flesh is the hinge of our salvation. When I read that, I thought, what does that mean? It certainly doesn't sound like the Catholic Church is rejecting it. It is saying that the flesh is essential for our salvation. The hinge. Another word for essential is necessary. Is there any confusion here? It means that understanding the body correctly is in fact crucial for us to reach eternity in heaven. God reveals his spiritual mystery through our bodies. Our bodies are an expression of the soul. Some of us just think the way relationships are today, we grow up just thinking, well, that's just the way they are. It's just normal. You're in a relationship, things go wrong, you get hurt, and they're hard work. That's just all part of it. They are hard work, but it's not completely true. In the beginning, the way relationships are now, and when I say in the beginning, I mean in Genesis, before original sin, relationships weren't the way they are now. Something's not quite right in our relationships these days. What happened in the beginning? What went wrong? Original sin is what went wrong. And if we're going to understand the true meaning of purity as God's glory shining in and through our bodies, we need to go back and understand what they experienced before original sin. We need to go back before there was clothing. And our MC tonight said that they put fig leaves on. Why did they choose fig leaves? Anyone know? Because they were big. Right. Okay, there's no theological answer, I don't think. Okay, what was the very first thing that happened as a result of Adam and Eve sinning? The very first thing that they did after original sin was they felt shame in their bodies. Remember, what is purity? Purity is God's glory shining in the human body, and it is also our ability to see that God is shining in their bodies. This is why they could be naked without shame. Because when they looked at each other, they only desired to love in the image of God. When Adam was in the garden, he felt lonely and he said it's not good for man to be alone. He couldn't find a helper suitable among the animals. And when God creates the woman, what does Adam say? He says, finally, I've found someone I can love. Who created sexual desire? We all have it. Some people would say people. Hugh Hefner in the Playboy Mansion. He has certainly used sexual desire to help destroy the body, but he didn't create it. Adam's sexual desire and ours is inspired by God. Sometimes you wonder, why do I have sexual desire? You know, it's so hard to live a pure life. If this wasn't here, my life would be a lot easier. But God created sexual desire as a power and a means for us to desire to be one with Him. Because when we look at another person, our spouse, we're supposed to see God in that person. Sexual desire is there for us to be inspired to be one with that person, and because we're seeing God, we're desiring to be one with God. That's why we've got sexual desire. So it's a beautiful and holy thing. Ask yourself, what are you going to think of when you view your spouse's body? Do you want to see them as an object, or do you want to see God in them? Pope John Paul II says that if we love in this way, in a pure way, and see God in the other person, this is fulfilling the meaning of our existence. This is because Jesus told us to love one another as He has loved us. Jesus died on the cross for us, and He gives Himself to us in Holy Communion every time we go to Holy Communion. Jesus also, He loved us, the church. So when we go to Holy Communion, we make up the church. When we go to Holy Communion with our husband, Jesus, we become one with Him. And divine life comes from that union of Christ and us. So the human body is supposed to reveal God's eternal plan to be one with us in heaven forever. That's why the devil's trying to destroy it. Because if we view the body incorrectly, we're not going to see heaven. We're not going to see heaven in that woman and desire to be one with God in heaven. We're going to see them as an object, completely misconstrue the whole idea of sex, and go off on a different path.